There we go. All
You
right.
have to legally let me know, though.
Yes. Erin, don't sue me. I'm recording.
I'll try not to, but if
Okay.
I need to, I might.
All right. If you need to sue me.
If I need to, yeah.
Well, I don't have any money, so I don't know how that's going to work out for you.
Dang it.
Okay. Welcome everyone.
Hi.
If you're just joining us just now, we're so happy that you're here. This is our Cinderella Livestream for Pop DNA. And this is also, we weren't really like making like a big deal out of this, but this is also our season 2 finale.
We've been doing this.
Just realized that today. Yeah. So yeah, this is gonna be a fun one. We are talking Cinderella. So I'm sure everybody is familiar with the story. So like if you guys want to if you guys want to like let us know in the chat what your favorite version of Cinderella is, like your favorite Cinderella movie, your favorite like world folklore version of Cinderella, go ahead and let us know, because we're going to get into talking about those things in a little bit here. But I'll just give you kind of a brief overview, and then Erin's going to do a story recap, and then we'll get into that stuff. So Cinderella, or the Little Glass Slipper, is a folk tale embodying an element of injustice and reward. In the Arne Thompson Uther Index of Folk Tales, it is classified as a 510A, or persecuted heroine. So that it's abbreviated as the ATU index. So this is kind of a collection of folktale types that was compiled in 1910 by in the German language by Finnish folklorist Antti Arne, and that's where the name of it comes from. So the two most famous variants of Cinderella in Western literature are those by Charles Perrault from 1697 and the Grimm brothers version in 1812. But there are thousands of variants known in folk traditions throughout the world, including those of China, Vietnam, Greek myth. Basically any culture you can think of has some version of a Cinderella story. And we will talk about those in a second after Erin does a quick story recap.
Hello. So yeah, for our story recap, it's a little different this time just because there are so many versions of this tale that some of the details kind of get changed and like altered and stuff, maybe more so than a lot of other things in our literature summer. Cinderella has been very kind of turned around and kind of made into the Frankenstein's monstered into different things, I think.
Yeah.
But just, the details that are kind of important, the discussion we're having today. So
I forgot to say, it is the most filmed story in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. But go on.
So yeah, you can understand how there's just, you're not going to film the exact same thing over and over and over again. You're going to like be innovative, right? So, but for our purposes today, so for the most part, as we meet Cinderella, she's living in a situation where abuse or social stigma, or both, are kind of regularly making a mockery of her. And it's a new thing in her life. So we know that she has lost a loved one or a family circumstance where she was happy and loved, and kind of come to live in a new circumstance. And So in a lot of cases, this involves kind of an evil stepmother and stepsisters, or some other form of kind of evil guardianship, who that guardian was kind of mismatched with her kind of paragon of either a father figure or a mother figure, or a positive guardian who has passed away, or is needed to go make money somewhere else and not be with her. Any way that she kind of gets alienated from that happiness. So, and then there is also a moment where we see the prince being told that he has to find his one true love pretty quickly. Like, usually the kingdom needs him to kind of step into a role of leadership, and he needs to find his one true love or a queen, whichever happens first, it's fine. So often the prince goes into the town and announces that he's having a ball in order to find this person. And it is within this exactly. It's within this this journey to declare this intention that he runs into Cinderella. And they meet and have kind of a connection, but for whatever reason, she is unable to give him her name, or sometimes this is due to embarrassment because she thinks of herself as less than because she's being told that she is by her family cycle. Sometimes it's a coincidence, right? So the prince gets he has to go, he gets torn away from her before this information can come. Either way, something happens to make it so that these two can't just say, hey, my name's this and I live in that house right there. That doesn't happen. So and then we have kind of Cinderella's trials and tribulations section a little bit, where her evil guardian has told her, you'll be allowed to go to the ball if you do this huge laundry list of things. And Cinderella perseveres and gets it all done, and does it only to have her evil family ruin her dress in some tellings, or otherwise make it impossible for her to go. And this is when she's fine. She's another important thing about Cinderella, just across all the interpretations, is that she's very resilient. And this is her lowest moment, where we see her thinking, maybe I can't overcome this. Maybe this is something I can't do. And then her fairy godmother or supernatural presence comes to her and creates her dress for her, creates a chariot for her out of kind of found household objects. And I'm being very vague because, again, it does vary across so many tellings. So the long and short of it is that she goes to the ball and everyone kind of sees her as beautiful, sees her as this mysterious lady, or human, or whichever. And then she has this meeting with the prince, and he knows instantly that it's this girl that he's met, and they have that connection again, and they stay together the whole night. And so the caveat that the fairy godmother has told her is that all of her kind of grandeur and all of the magic that the fairy godmother has given her will be returned to normal by the stroke of midnight. So we see Cinderella enjoy her time with the prince, and somehow she still doesn't give him her name. Together all night.
It's a minor detail.
She does not tell him what her name is, where she lives. It's fine. She just doesn't mention that. And so, of course, it's almost the stroke of midnight, and she knows she has to get back, and so she runs away. And he doesn't know her name. He does not know anything about her, except that he has this slipper, this magic glass slipper. And so then next day he goes through the town and tries to find this person who, because people don't have the same shoe size. So he goes to everyone that he can find, and eventually, through more trials and tribulations, Cinderella gets to try it on, and then they live happily ever after. But not without a lot of interference from the stepmother. It felt real disjointed because, again, the story changes so much, but those are your basics.
Yeah. But it's interesting that like in almost all of the like different versions of it from, you know, from like all different cultures, they all retain that element of the shoe, that it's like she loses a shoe and that's how the prince finds her, which I just find so interesting. In a lot of versions it's like a golden shoe rather than a glass slipper. Or there's also kind of like the slight controversy about in Perrault's version, the word that he used, I forget what the actual word is. I think it's but like the word that he uses in French is very similar to the word for fur. So they're like, well, he could mean that it was like a fur slipper, not a glass slipper, because the words for glass and fur are very similar in French, apparently. But it's always a shoe.
Interesting.
And I think that not always, but almost always there's a shoe. And I think that that's just so interesting. Like, I wonder why that is. Yeah. So, some of the really early versions of the Cinderella story that we have are from ancient Greece and ancient China. So in the Greek version, it's the story of Rhodopis or Rhodopis. I think Rhodopis. I think that's how you say it. So this story was recounted by the Greek geographer Strabo sometime between 7 BC and AD 23. So it's about a Greek young woman who is enslaved in Egypt, and she ends up marrying the king of Egypt. It's usually considered to be the earliest. It was recorded, you know, I said when it was recorded, right? Between 7 BC and AD 23.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said that already. Okay, cool. And so the account that he gives of it is pretty brief. I can actually just read you the whole passage. It says, they tell the fabulous story that when she was bathing, an eagle snatched one of her sandals from her maid and carried it to Memphis. And while the king was administering justice in the open air, the eagle, when it arrived above his head, flung the sandal into his lap. And the king, stirred both by the beautiful shape of the sandal, the man who loves shoes, and by the strangeness of the occurrence, sent men in all directions into the country in quest of the woman who wore the sandal. And when she was found in the city of Naucratis, she was brought up to Memphis and became the wife of the king. So it doesn't have the element of like the, you know, like going to the ball and the fairy godmother. It's just he just gets her shoe and decides to marry her. It's just pretty interesting. And then in the Chinese version, it's called Yi Shen. And so this one is really interesting. This is also a very, very early version of it. So it's actually also very similar to the Vietnamese version, which is the story of Tam Cam. So I'm just noticing in my notes I don't have. Do I have the date? Oh, so it's estimated that it was written down around AD 850, the Chinese version. So this version follows very closely like that kind of that template that you just went over of the story structure of Cinderella. So Yu Shen is the young woman, and she lives with, I think in some versions it's stepmother and stepsisters, but in other versions it's different relatives. But she, is subjugated to them. And then, so in, let's see if I have this correctly. So it's, rather than a fairy godmother, she has these magical fish bones that, so like she was friends with this fish. And I think that in some versions it's implied that it's like the spirit of her mother is somehow like in the fish. But then like her stepmother kills the fish and serves it for dinner, but she keeps the bones, and the bones like communicate to her, and that's what kind of takes on the fairy godmother role. And then rather than going to a ball, she goes to a New Year celebration, and that's how she meets the prince. So for this one, this version has been adapted in a few different ways. Obviously, a lot in China, but also in Western media. There's a novel called Bound by Donna Jo Napoli that retells the story. There's a children's picture book, and the film Year of the Fish is a modern retelling. Yeah. And then I mentioned the Vietnamese version, Tam Cam. This story's plot is very similar. So up until, so it's very similar to like the typical plot, and very, very similar to the Chinese Yu Shen plots. But then once the heroine of this story marries the king, the story continues after that. Yeah, and you let's see. Oh, I didn't put in my notes what happens after that, but that's fine.
That's okay.
Yeah. And then there is also a version from Arabia that's actually found in the 1001 Nights. That's very similar to the typical Cinderella plot. And then one story that I remember from my childhood, because it was a picture book, is Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters, which is set in South Africa. And this one's kind of different because this is actually like not exactly a traditional folktale. It was it's like an original story, but it was inspired by a folktale from Zimbabwe. So the author of Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters is John Steptoe, and he got his source for, kind of adapting into a Cinderella type story is from G.M. Thiel's collection of Kafir folklore, published in 1895. So I wasn't able to find the text, like the original text from Thiel's work, to kind of compare and see like how close to Cinderella that tale actually is. But yeah, I would be interested to see like if the actual story that's from the folk tradition, if it does line up with the Cinderella story that so many others do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I'm going to share my screen real quick. I found
So fancy.
yeah, I found this resource. It's a chart of the different, oh no, where did it go? Okay. It is a chart of like comparing and contrasting all of the well, not all, but several of the different Cinderella stories.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I have it. So I'm going to go ahead and share that. There we go. All right, can everybody see that? I guess they can't really tell us. Okay. So this has like a name and date on there. So clearly this is designed to be like a worksheet for like second graders. But it's
sure, yeah,
that it like breaks down several different versions, just like into their basic elements. So it has like
right.
Yeah, so like, so I'm guessing that this is the Grimm brothers version,
right,
because they also have Cinderella on here at the bottom, which is the Perrault version. And then here's Mufaro's beautiful daughters. She lives with her father and sister, and rather than having a fairy godmother, it's actually the king who helps her. The rough face girl, I'm not sure what this one is. That's interesting. And then there's an Irish version that it has on here, which I did not find that one in my research, so I'll have to look into that more. And then here's Yushan as well. So it has fish bones.
Yeah.
Oh, I like what happens to the evil characters. That's interesting. They lived in their cave, crushed by flying stones. Yikes.
Oh man.
Yeah. So yeah. This will be, I'll see if I can put this chart into our blog post once that's published. So it's an interesting thing to refer to. Oh, my mom says I love charts.
I do too.
Nice. Teachers.
I believe that the rough-faced girl is pretty similar to kind of the classic, more structured, like slightly newer version of Cinderella, like not newer in terms of like now, but newer than like Yeshen, you know.
Okay. Do you know where it's from?
I don't. I taught it once with my little guys, but I don't quite remember.
Well, you know what? I have internet, so I'm just gonna look it up really quick.
You have the interwebs?
I do.
Wow.
Oh, it's Algonquin.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, yeah. Nicole just said rough-faced girl's Native American. Okay. Yeah. So
okay.
Native American, specifically Algonquin. So interesting. Awesome. Yeah. So it really is like it's all over the world. Like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
I want to know how this happened. Yeah. So, oh, and then people have been saying in the comments what their favorite versions of Cinderella are. So we have Rodgers and Hammerstein, probably the one with Whitney Houston. Ever After, the one that Carl tells in Caddyshack. I have no idea. Rodgers and Hammerstein version with Brandy. Yeah, cool.
Do you have a favorite, Rhonda?
Do I have a favorite? Probably Ever After.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, we're going to get into talking about the different notable adaptations. Um, yeah. So, Erin, what's your favorite?
I love the Brandy in terms of like a version that you can go to right now. I love the one with Brandy and Whitney Houston, and I also love how Cinderella is explored in Into the Woods. But we'll get
Okay.
to that. Yeah.
Yes, we will get into that. So, I think probably the one that, well, maybe not anymore, but at least like when we were little, probably the first introduction that you had to Cinderella might have been the Disney animated.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
And I thought it was a little boring. It wasn't my
Oh,
favorite
really?
thing when I was little. Yeah.
I loved it, and I watched it like every day when I was 3. Like,
Aw,
I like wore out our VHS tape.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think it's
I
interesting. Oh, what were you gonna say?
I was much more interested in the animals in it than I was in Cinderella
Oh
herself. Like
yeah, yeah,
I
you are into animals.
I am. I was into Lucifer. I was into Gus Gus.
Lucy
I love them.
and Bruno.
And Bruno.
I liked Bruno.
I was so much more into like the whole social world of the animals, and then it would be humans, and I was like, blech, what is this?
I don't need no humans.
No.
Um,
No.
and I think that I think I don't know. Do you think that like younger kids now are still familiar with this version, or has it been replaced by like the 2015 live action one?
Yeah,
Um,
I kind of feel like there's other stories being told that might take pieces of Cinderella, but I think like the Cinderella animated one or like from the 50s feels a little bit I've heard from children in my life that it feels a little bit slow or like less complicated and less kind of
simplistic.
compelling than say a Frozen or a Moana or
Sure.
a yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like you and I were just talking about, like before we started the live, like so last summer we talked about Beauty and the Beast, which I
Yeah.
think is a much more complex and even darker story, whereas
Yeah.
Cinderella is a very like it's iconic, I think, because it's so simplistic. Like
Right.
there's not a lot of elements to it, so you can really do anything you want with the story.
Yeah.
I just thought of I really liked this quote from Walt Disney about the 1950 animated version. He says, talking about Cinderella, she believed in dreams all right, but she also believed in doing something about them. When Prince Charming didn't come along, she went over to the palace and got him. Which, like, yeah, I like that. You know, I think that we kind of talk about like Cinderella, and especially that version of Cinderella, as kind of a what's the word I'm looking for? Like old fashioned, like
Right.
pre-feminist in a way.
Certainly.
But
Yeah.
like he makes a good point. Like
Yeah.
Cinderella takes action even in that version of it. Like she um yeah, like she's the one, like she has agency. She decides she wants to go to the palace. The fairy godmother has to help her,
Right.
but like she's the one who made the choice. And then also like when she's locked in the attic. It's not the prince who saves her, it's her friends, her little animal friends who like save her, and she's also like part of that plan of like how they're gonna get her out. So like I think it kind of gets a bad rap a little bit, but
I think
I can totally see how like kids might feel like it's slow or simplistic, but
right. And I think it's also kind of a continuation of this conversation we've been having all summer about how women got agency. And at this point, going to a ball that you maybe weren't supposed to be at in order to meet like this prince was agency, even if it really doesn't feel like it is, right? Because the world has changed so much in so many ways.
And I think especially, I mean, we'll talk more about like more of the adaptations, but I think especially like at the time when like the two most popular European versions were published, so like the Perrault version from France and then the Brothers Grimm, first originally published in German, but then it went to like all of Europe basically in 1812. So like during that time, women in society didn't have a lot of agency or independence. So like it was, you know, kind of like we've talked about like with Jane Austen a lot, like your only option was to marry someone who could take care of you. And so in that way, like Cinderella is revolutionary for that time because she's a servant. She's a very low, you know, depending on like the version, she might be like a merchant's daughter, she might be a nobleman's daughter, but she's, you know, she's been placed very low on society's hierarchy, and she marries basically the most high ranking person she can, which is like, you know, that's as far as like women's liberation could go at the time. So I think it is like a very I think we talked about this in our Christmas Prince episode too, how like Cinderella is kind of a mono myth, especially like for women, because like throughout our you know, kind of throughout our history, society has kind of told women like this is what you have to do to be valid. And so Cinderella is kind of like the ultimate validation. Like marrying a prince is like the ultimate, right? Which is interesting.
I think it also makes it fascinating to me that then the animated version for Disney came out in 1950. So it was kind of being used to put women back in kind of that place. So it came from this place of agency and working towards that. And then in the 50s, they were like, yes, but let's also use this in kind of a Mad Men style, like, situation to have little girls think that their place was there. It's interesting.
It's not like a black and white easy answer kind of thing. I think it kind of is like, it has been kind of like the Cinderella story has been kind of like portrayed as like, oh, this is just like a regressive, like, you know, like, but it's definitely something, a story that has like evolved with society, which I think is the mark of an iconic story. If you anyone in the chat, if you guys have any thoughts about that, please feel free to voice those. But I kind of want to talk about the 2015 live action Disney one.
You mean the one that was directed by Kenneth freaking Branagh, which I had no idea about?
I did not know that.
I didn't either until this week. I was like, what?
Stark in it. And Kate Blanchett, of course. Like, Yeah. What are you? Didn't you and I see it together?
We sure did.
Together with like Lizzie and maybe
with
Anna.
Lizzie and Julia and Anna.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Our usual crew.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember like walking out of the theater and I think Lizzie being like, what was that? Like,
right. Yeah.
yeah. What did you think of it?
I was so bored.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a musical theater head, so like other people had done the story so much better and in so much more like of a compelling way that I feel like that was just Disney threw a bunch of money and did the exact same story and didn't change it or didn't I don't know. I thought it was boring. What did you think?
Yeah, I don't think it was very memorable
No.
except for the dress.
Yeah.
The dress is the best part.
Was that Lily James? Am I remembering
Yeah,
that
it's
right?
Lily James. Yeah.
I
Yes.
love her.
Yeah, she's great. But yeah,
I don't know. I was bored. I haven't revisited it since. I don't
I
know.
haven't either. I was like I had like a vague plan to watch it a couple weeks ago and I just assumed it would be on Disney Plus, but it's not. So,
Weird.
yeah.
Neither is my favorite one, the Brandy and Whitney Houston. That's not on Disney Plus either.
No,
So
and it should be. It
it
totally
should
should be.
it should be. Like
Um yeah. Yeah, I love that one too. I think that one um the Brandy and Whitney Houston version, I remember watching that as a kid
uh-huh.
and it was like the late 90s, right? So,
Yeah.
um,
97.
I think it actually came out the same year as Ever After, which is
Oh.
interesting. But yeah, I remember watching that one and like, yeah, I absolutely loved it. It's magical. It has
Yeah.
colorblind casting, which
Thank goodness.
yeah, yeah, it's great.
I think Brandy's rendition of In My Own Little Corner shows her strength so well and so beautifully. She presents Cinderella as an intelligent young woman who is trying to figure out her situation. And like, oh, that performance gives me chills.
Is that her I Want song?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then like you have Whoopi Goldberg in there as the queen, who's
Right.
so funny, and Jason Alexander is hilarious,
And
and Bernadette
Bernadette
Peters.
Peters.
Ugh. And the stepsisters lament song where they talk about why can't a man want them?
Why would a fellow want a girl like her?
I like her.
Yes.
And those I should have looked it up, but the two women playing the stepsisters are also Broadway like legends. They're so funny and so great, and like, yeah, they're I don't know. I felt like whenever I think of Cinderella, that's the version that's like,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Um yeah, so that version has a really interesting history. So it was first broadcast on TV so it was actually written for television. Um and it was first broadcast in 1957 starring Julie Andrews as
I
Cinderella.
saw the poster for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like the version of it that I watched as a kid before the 1997 one, the 1965 broadcast starring Leslie Ann Warren. I I think we had like a VHS of it that was like taped off of TV, and I watched that one a lot too.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then of course, yeah, the 1997, I think is like our generation's.
Yeah.
Like that's our Cinderella. Um, yeah.
And
But
then,
tell me about. Oh, did you have any other?
oh, just for the 2013 Broadway stage
Oh
production,
yeah.
that was kind of the start, I feel like, of this desperate need for Broadway to have like C-list celebrities on Broadway to get money. So we saw
Uh-huh.
like Carly Rae
To
Jepsen
get butts in
played
seats.
Cinderella. Like, just it Broadway, I love you, but it felt pandering. It felt a little bit like, we got a pop star. Please come see this. I don't know. She might have been lovely, but it just felt a little.
Well, you know, if there were people who went to see that show just because of her and then they fell in love with Broadway, like,
Right.
you know, that's
Yeah,
that's fine.
that's
But
fine.
tell me about Into the Woods though, because I really
Do
want to
we
hear
do we have 10 hours?
that. Yes.
So there is so much to say about Into the Woods, but I kept it to how Cinderella is portrayed in it. So first for Into the Woods was Sondheim, obviously. Well, obvious to me. I don't know if that's obvious. And so Into the Woods
Not
takes a
everyone
look
has
at,
your encyclopedic Broadway knowledge, Erin.
on my level, you guys. I'm not going to help you. You got to help yourselves on this one. So Into the Woods, Sondheim has taken all of these classic fairy tales and kind of given them agency, basically. So with Cinderella, you see her as a young woman who's excited about this whole prospect of being with the prince, also really contemplating what it means to be a young woman having her first romantic relationship. A young woman who is, as she says, it's my first big decision. So that point in your life where you're being given your life and you're making your first life choices. And so I just think that's a really interesting moment to showcase. That meant a lot to me in my early 20s of like, it's my first big decision. It's the first time that I am out here on my own making choices. Whereas like with Cinderella, in this version, her family member has passed away, and she is stuck with this evil, and she is given agency for the first time, in that she can choose to be a young woman in society and engage in this romantic relationship with the prince. She also, interestingly, she also notes that, and this is a direct line from On the Steps of the Palace, her first song, or not her first song, but one of her iconic songs. She says, "It's fun to deceive if you know you can leave, but you have to be wary." So, and even just saying that gives me chills. Like, it's, she has seen her, in this case, her father, have a romantic relationship with someone who turned out to be an abuser. She has seen what a romantic relationship can do to your life, and she's saying, I have to be careful here because I have nothing else. I don't know where to go. It's playing into that agency. It might be a modern telling, but it's very much set in a time where women didn't have agency, and that we're not given like a year, but it's very much that classic,
Like the old time.
yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciated young women being kind of given this discussion on safety in relationships and in romantic things. And that's what really draws me to this telling of the story. And then it also reminds me a lot of Romeo and Juliet, in that we see, so Juliet is kind of the thinker and Romeo is just kind of dangerously in love with her. And I think you see that same dynamic here because so Cinderella is over there thinking, gosh, this could have really serious repercussions and I'm really nervous about it, but I'm still going to go for it. And then Prince Charming says, I was raised to be charming, not sincere. So she kind of calls that one. She kind of like, somehow she knows that he did just have a chance encounter. You know, it's kind of Sondheim's answer to this musical theater trope of we met for 5 seconds and now we're lifelong partners.
Kind of like in the Rodgers and Hammerstein version where they have 10 minutes ago I met you and they're in love. Yeah.
There's a reason I'm not going into depth about that because gross. But, I think that there's also a messiness to this portrayal of Cinderella. So in part of her, in some of her song, On the Steps of the Palace, she talks about, like, when she's having this discussion, she talks about how she's stuck on the steps of the palace, having stepped in some goo and, like, fallen over. It's that moment.
And, like time stops.
Yeah. It's that moment of, like, you've just had a really long day and then you fall down or break your slipper or lose your slipper, whatever it is. She's not in a reverie, like a romantic reverie at this point. She's very much like, well, this is an interesting situation I'm in and I don't really know what to do. And of course, as the movie, or not the movie isn't that, I don't know, it's fine.
I've only seen the movie, like that's all I am going off of, but yeah.
I think the stage play is just honestly one of those.
Julie is here and she says, I love how much Sondheim calls the prince out on his behavior.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, like, they don't wind up together. It's not like a happiness. It's they have this moment of, like, it's from the song, it was just a moment in the woods, right? Like, we were in love for a time, or we thought we were, or we were in lust, or whatever it is. And then they all move on. Like, it's not the traditional happy ending, but it is the happy ending because she has her agency as an individual. And so I think that's what draws me to a lot of Sondheim's work, is that you find your happiness on your own by yourself. It's not necessarily in coupling.
Right. I think it's kind of funny that Into the Woods Jr. is just the first act. They don't do the second act. So they just get, like, the, like, you know, like, cliche happy fairy tale endings, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think we've talked about this, but I think we can start giving this more to children. Like, we can start allowing them to consider that their happiness comes from within.
Right.
I think that
like, kids can handle complex ideas.
Fine. They're fine.
One book I was planning to talk about is actually kind of going along with that same idea, is Just Ella. You guys see it? By Margaret Peterson Haddix. And this is a middle grade, and I read it when I was like 10, so it's kind of old.
I did too.
But it's so it's like after the events of Cinderella, and she's now living in the palace and, like, getting ready to marry the prince, but she is, like, figuring out that, like, maybe he's not who she thought he was, right? He's not who she thought he was. And, like, being a princess and living this royal life is not at all what she thought it was going to be. So this like blew my mind when I was 10. So And I think that she does end up with a different love interest, which like I think if it was written now, maybe that wouldn't be part of it. At least I would
Right.
but like she definitely like becomes much more like self-aware and self-possessed as a person,
Yeah.
and decides to like, make her own choices about things. So I would still recommend
Totally.
this for adults and for like kids.
Yeah.
Did we want to talk about any of the other movie adaptations?
I know that you just had a good time with some of them that were maybe
oh, A
out
Cinderella
there.
Story.
Yes.
Yeah. I so yeah. Um so I had seen A Cinderella Story before. And I watched it again, and it's just as terrible as I remembered. And
Yeah.
then because I have access to an HBO Max subscription, because that's like what all of them are on, I watched two of the other ones. Another Cinderella Story starring Selena Gomez.
Yay, Selena. I love
It's
her.
also deeply terrible, but in a different way.
Okay.
And then I think it's A Cinderella Story Once Upon a Song.
Oh my, I
And
can't.
it's like much more competently made, I think, but it had like this really gross like cultural appropriation element to it. And I was like,
Oh,
yeah. So
wow.
my recommendation is don't watch any of them. Unless you really, really want to see Jennifer Coolidge, then watch the first one. Um,
Oh, I didn't know she was in
she's
it.
the
I love her.
stepmother. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, I love
Yeah.
that.
Oh, and Regina King is in the first one too. But
Oh, okay.
she's like egregiously underused though. I mean,
Yeah,
Regina King is underused in anything that she's
it's true. Yeah.
yeah, so I don't really want to spend a lot of time on those. But I would love to tell you about Lola, which is a telenovela. So it's in Spanish. I think it
Yeah.
was actually the version of it that I saw was produced in Mexico, but I think there's also a version from, I want to say, Brazil. I think
Yeah.
Brazil. But yeah, the version I saw was from Mexico, so it's in Spanish, but you get subtitles. It's fine. You can read. It's okay.
Yeah.
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 Have you seen Parasite? Anyway, so Lola is like a modernized retelling of Cinderella. So the Lola is a maid in this wealthy household, and she ends up falling in love with like the son of the
Mm-hmm.
and it's also a musical. Like she like sings songs with the kids, so it's like The Sound of Music meets Cinderella, kind of, which The
Love
Sound of
that.
Music is kind of like Cinderella.
Right, right.
Huh? Huh? um and then I think I mentioned I absolutely love Ever After. I think Ever After and the 1997 Brandy Cinderella are kind of tied for me for my
Okay.
favorite Cinderella. Um, somebody said farther up, somebody mentioned Ever After. Um, yeah, Tina says Ever After really gives Cinderella more power. I love that focus. It's
Okay.
definitely more of a modern woman's story. Yeah, I totally. Um, yeah, I think that's kind of Ever After was very formative to my personality as a child, because she like loves books, and like the prince, so like it's kind of that element that you were talking about when you were doing the story recap of like she meets the prince at some point before and they kind of like get to know each other. So like the prince like takes her on a date to a library at a monastery.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And then she like saves him from some Romani bandits who like
Okay.
yeah, but then they like make friends with the Romani people.
Okay.
Yeah, so pretty interesting. Oh, they do use the what's now considered a slur for Romani people in the movie. Just but
Right.
yeah. Yeah, so it's like a more, there's no like magic involved in Ever After.
Yeah.
But Leonardo da Vinci is in it.
Of course.
And he's like her fairy
Obviously.
godfather because he like helps, well, no, so the dress that she wears and the shoes that she wear to the ball belonged to her mother. But then he makes
Okay.
Leonardo da Vinci makes her like these like fairy wings that she, oh, I should be wearing fairy wings right now.
Sure.
That she wears as well.
If he's the
Yeah.
fairy godfather, does he put a horse's head in the stepmom's bed at all? Is there any of that?
Yes.
Could he have been a contender? Is that a different movie?
They go to the
Okay.
mattresses. They leave the gun and take the cannoli.
They leave the good.
Yes. Um, yeah. So please watch Ever After
Yeah.
because it's amazing. Um, let's move on, shall we? So we talked about Just Ella, and then Nicole said Nicole has also read Just Ella, and she also says Ella Enchanted. Yes, Ella Enchanted.
Yes.
Also a very formative work for my childhood.
Me too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then this was turned into a movie, but the movie, no.
I would not see it. I refused.
That's probably the right call because
no.
Yeah. It's so weird because like, so for anyone not familiar with Ella Enchanted, this kind of like explains um the reason why Cinderella like, is subservient, like keeps, serving her stepmother. And oh, Nicole just said we don't talk about the movie. Like why she keeps serving her stepmother and stepsisters and why she doesn't just say no and like walk away is because she is under a curse that makes her be obedient. So any time someone gives her like a command, she has to obey it, like because magic. And so that's why. So then at the end, spoilers, at the end of the book of Ella Enchanted, so like this, so like over the course of the book, she like gets to know the prince and they fall in love. And then he, at the end, he asks her, after the ball and everything, he asks her to marry him. And her stepmother sees that, oh, like she could have like an advantage if, if Ella becomes the princess, then like the stepmother could like command her to, do things that would help out the stepmother, right? And so the stepmother tells her, you have to marry him. And Ella says no. Like she says, no, I'm not going to marry him because I'm trying to protect him and protect the rest of the country, because I know that you're just going to use it for your advantage. And that is what breaks the curse. It's because she's decided, like, I'm taking my agency back. I'm not going to let you not only hurt me, but hurt other people through me.
Yeah.
Which is so powerful and so like, yeah, like I feel so lucky that I got to read this as a kid.
Totally.
But then in the movie, I know Nicole, you don't want to talk about the movie, but I just have to like say the most egregious thing that the movie did was they completely changed the meaning of Ella breaking the curse, because what happens is that, so they have this like character in the movie that's not in the book at all, the prince's uncle, who is played by Wesley from The Princess Bride. And he knows about Ella's curse, and he commands Ella to kill the prince at the ball, and that's, you know, the command that she says no to and breaks the curse, which I get, like, that's more dramatic for a movie, like, I understand, but I think that they really yeah, I think that they really, you know, underestimated the audience, because it was like they're like, you know, people aren't gonna like think that it's like exciting if she's just like, no, I won't marry you because whatever. Like, we gotta make it really dramatic. There's gotta be like, you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm disappointed in the movie.
Yeah. I loved that book because I remember, I feel like it matured. I read it when I was in like 3rd grade. And I remember feeling it mature me and my thought processes and my agency as I read it.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it terrifying. I found this whole idea that she could not say no to be terrifying. And that was such a great introduction into my own agency as a human. I saw the trailer for the movie. It looked so upbeat. It looked so, and the story for me is a tragedy in many ways because she's so abused throughout the whole thing. It really grew me as a human. So I was really frustrated that they didn't give the young people of that time the same chance to kind of grapple with these things that you're gonna have to grapple with as an adult, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and I think the book is so much a heroine's journey.
yeah.
Like, so it's so much about internal conflict and internal growth that that is kind of hard to cinematize. So I don't know. I would kind of like to see like a different movie adaptation of it, to see like if someone could actually get that part of it right. I think that would be interesting.
I would need it to have the same like maybe if the same person who directed that version of Jane Eyre that we watched, kind of similar, scary, real things, maybe.
Yeah. Or what about like Autumn de Wilde, who directed Emma?
Yeah.
That just came out. I would love to. Yeah, I want to see her direct everything, honestly.
She can stay.
Her and Ava DuVernay and Greta Gerwig could just direct everything.
Great.
And for the rest of time, that'd be great.
I concur. Yeah.
Yeah, and Bong Joon-ho. Have you seen Parasite? All right. I'm going to tell you about a couple more books that are retellings of Cinderella. So I have this one. It's All the Ever Afters by Danielle Teller. So this one is from the stepmother's perspective.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it starts when the stepmother is really young, and she goes to work in this manor, and then and the like the owner of the manor is Cinderella's father. So they eventually fall in love and get married, and yeah. So this one is really, I read it maybe like a year ago, so I don't remember a lot about it, but I remember really, really liking it. It reminded me somewhat of The Beast's Heart, which
Right.
I talked about on the Beauty and the Beast episode, that it's very like, so it's like historical, like it's definitely set in a historical time period, and it just feels like very very organic and very real. So it's really good. And then another one that I'm actually in the middle of reading right now, it's a library book, is Rogue Princess.
Yeah.
E.R. Myers. And this is a sci-fi gender swapped retelling.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a princess, and the Cinderella character is like a boy who's like a mechanic on like spaceships and stuff. So I'm not very far into it, so I can't tell you too much about it. But
are those both YA?
This one is Rogue Princess is YA. All the Ever Afters is an adult book, but it kind of reads somewhat like YA. So if you're used to YA, this shouldn't be too. All the Ever Afters shouldn't be too difficult to pick up. But there are a couple other YA that I don't have the physical book, so I can't show you. But
where's your commitment, Rhonda?
Come on. I have them on my Kindle here. They're on my Kindle. Or actually, I don't have Geekerella on my Kindle. It belongs to my mom. So she has it right now. But Geekerella is really cute. It's a modern retelling, a modern YA retelling. And it's set at like fan conventions, like Comic-Con. Yeah, it was really, really cute. And then Cinder by Marissa Meyer.
Everyone read that a few years ago.
Yeah, everyone read it. And I think that one's super interesting. It's also sci-fi, but Cinder, the Cinderella character, she's like an android, or she has like a robotic hand and a robotic foot.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, and then one more, which I haven't read, but it's been on my list forever, is Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister by
Yes.
Yeah, the same author as Wicked.
Mm-hmm.
So, Erin, we need to talk about The Wizard of Oz at some point.
Yes.
Anyway, so yeah, Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister. I think that was like a Wonderful World of Disney TV adaptation in like the early 2000s.
Oh.
Because I remember watching it on TV. I don't know if it was Disney, but somebody adapted it for like a TV movie.
I don't know how I missed that. Wow.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it.
I find that Gregory Maguire's writing has really great ideas, and then his writing leaves a lot to be desired. So I'm really interested in adaptations of his work. But sometimes like I felt that Wicked got a little bit too like adult themes, but like gratuitously, I feel like a little bit. So I love it when his work is adapted.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah. Melissa says, Erin, Parasite is basically my favorite film. Nicole says, I want to hear more about Parasite. Parasite is kind of like a dark, inverted Cinderella story.
I really want to watch it. I'm not like not watching it for like a stance or anything. The world is sad. I can't take anything right now.
Sure. Yeah, I get it. Did you have any other adaptations, whether movies or books or anything else that's like a direct adaptation of Cinderella?
No, the rest of my stuff is kind of why Cinderella is adaptable to musical theater.
Oh, okay. Cool. Well, I was kind of interested. We kind of started to touch on this toward the beginning. But I was curious about like why we're so drawn to Cinderella stories. Like why does like every culture have a Cinderella story, and why do we keep retelling this story? So what do you think it is about Cinderella that is so compelling?
I know that for me as a young child, it was kind of like a model for resiliency. She was kind of like everything was bare bones awful around her, and she was still able to have a sense of humor. She was able to use her imagination to get her through these awful things. It was kind of like, we know that I now like think about psychology a lot, and it was kind of my introduction. Do I?
Not you.
I thought I didn't even know what the brain was. It was kind of my introduction.
I barely even ever heard of Carl Jung.
I don't know anything about psychology. It was kind of my first foray into kind of this study of resiliency and this study of kind of how to use humor, and not like humor like I'm performing for others and like making my friends laugh. Humor like for yourself as coping mechanism. First kind of made her fascinating to me. What about you?
Yeah, I feel that. I think so. I mentioned that the 1950 animated version was my favorite movie when I was 3, until Beauty and the Beast came out, and then that one was like, but I think so like as a 3-year-old, I just liked, like the dress and like, but yeah, I think I think Ella Enchanted really made me think about the story in a different way, which like, this is like kind of a soapbox of mine, that like transformative adaptations of old stories teach us new things about them. Which that's a discussion for another time. But I think that reading the story through that lens as a 10-year-old made me think about like, like free will and like making choices, and and like rethinking my my perception of like circumstances. You know what I mean? Because like Cinderella is in like very traumatic circumstances. But she, like you're saying, like she has such resilience that she, she perseveres, and she eventually rises above those circumstances. And I think that's just like a very human urge, a very human desire, that like if I just persevere, if I just keep, being a decent, good person, even though all these terrible things are happening, like there's that hope that eventually you'll, rise above that. So yeah, I think that's a very Melissa just said, I think at the heart of every Cinderella is a rebel.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
Totally.
Because, she's really kind of like rebelling against like the stepmother and stepsisters who are being so terrible to her, but she's saying, I'm not going to repay, I'm not going to repay this cruelty with more cruelty. I'm going to be kind and good, which is kind of a quiet kind of rebellion. Yeah, I like that a lot.
I think it's also a discussion of what it is to be kind. Like, you can be kind and also rebellious. A lot of
Right.
times, young children are told that kindness is not standing up for yourself. You know, like,
Sure.
people use kindness to teach bad lessons. And I think with
Yeah.
Cinderella, you get kindness rebellion, which is nice to see.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that idea of like you need to be kind, so you need to just do everything that you're told. No
Right.
questions asked.
Right.
Just blind obedience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's really interesting. I like this. Um, oh, Nicole said I added Geekerella to my TBR.
Yay!
Oh, Nicole recently told me that every book I recommend she adds to her TBR.
I know that to be true. I have, yeah.
All right. Yay, Nicole, I hope you like it. And then Tina said Geekerella has a You've Got Mail element. That's true because they communicate via text. Like, so I think it's like they like somebody has like a wrong phone number. I don't remember exactly, but they like
Oh.
so like they don't meet in person. They're just communicating through text messages and they don't know each other's identity. So
Okay.
kind of cute.
Yeah. A similar thing happens in From Justin to Kelly. So,
Oh, okay.
you know, blockbuster fave from Justin to
Yes.
Kelly.
My cousin loved Kelly Clarkson, and so she bought a DVD of that movie. She hadn't seen the movie, but she saw that the DVD was like $4 at Walmart or something, and so she bought it and she took it home and watched it, and she was like, "What the? This is just like I feel so cheated."
It was featured on How Did This Get Made, and that just made my heart so happy. I watched it in like 4th grade, and I was like, "This is so cool!" And now,
No.
no.
Okay. So we're going to shift gears a little bit um into just a couple of different um stories or works in literature, or in your case musical theater, that
Your
we
favorite topic,
yes,
musical?
musical theater, that we see similar like themes and ideas as Cinderella.
Yeah.
So I actually have thought and even written about this previously. So I see a very similar, not just themes, but also like premise and story to Cinderella in Jane Austen's Mansfield Park.
Yes.
So, you know me, I never pass up a chance to talk about Jane Austen.
Nope.
So I think if you Nicole says Rhonda loves musicals. LOL. I love classic musicals. Okay. Like anything written after like 1970 is like no. But classic.
Who was singing Hamilton before this?
Hamilton doesn't count. It's like a totally different thing, okay?
You don't count.
Okay, so I'm talking about Jane Austen. Okay. My favorite thing to talk about. So if you're familiar with like the story of Mansfield Park at all, I think you can pretty easily see how it matches up with the story of Cinderella, because you have Fanny Price, who is our Cinderella character. She's living with her aunt, actually two aunts, and well, does Aunt Norris live there? No, she doesn't actually live there, but she's like there all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like Leslie Knope, and she's like trying to recall that episode of Friends, and she's like, "Is Phoebe there?" Yeah. um, so like her aunt, her two aunts and her two female cousins, Julia and Mariah, are do not treat her very well. You know, she lives in like the attic of the house, and it's like not heated. There's even like a whole like part of the story where like, so like her uncle is away a lot of the time, but then like when he comes back, he finds out that like her room doesn't have a fire in it, and he's like, what, you need to have a fire in your room. So he kind of ends up sort of being the fairy godmother.
Yeah.
Because he like, so there is like a part of the story where there's a ball at Mansfield Park, and Fanny, you know, has a new dress that her uncle bought for her to go to this ball, and she dances with her cousin Edmund. This is what, okay, I can't talk about Mansfield Park because Fanny marries her first cousin, you guys. I'm sorry. I can't. Okay. So just, sorry, I spoiled the ending. So she dances with her cousin Edmund, who she's been in love with since she was like 12 years old or whatever. So that's, you know, yeah. But yeah, like the story is just like those elements of it just match up so well with Cinderella. And then it's also, you know, I mentioned that like the folktale types, Cinderella is the persecuted heroine, which definitely fits with Fanny. She also, just like Cinderella, Fanny has like this innate goodness and kindness and that even though she's in these circumstances, these adverse circumstances, she still retains that moral center. There's a certain point in the book where a young man named Henry Crawford proposes to her, and she doesn't trust his motivations. She kind of sees things, like she sees people better than everyone else around her. Like she can see, you know, people's true moral character. And so she says like, no, like I don't trust his motivation, so I'm not going to marry him. And her uncle basically like tries to force her to marry him, and she says no. Like, so that's like one way that her uncle is not like the fairy godmother, but yeah, she retains that like that goodness and loyalty, and in the end she gets her just reward, I suppose, because she ends up marrying the person that she wants to, and she has she's a persecuted heroine. I was like thinking about, so I did so I wrote a blog post about like if Disney princesses were Jane Austen heroines, and I had Cinderella as Fanny Price. But I was thinking about like I want to write like a bigger thing about like fairy tales and Jane Austen and how they match up. Because I was thinking,
anyone
like,
listening, so that's copyrighted and belongs to Rhonda.
Yeah, because I was thinking about, so like I mentioned that the Grimm's version of Cinderella was published in 1812, which is right around when Jane Austen would have been writing Mansfield Park.
Right.
I really think I really think that's what she did. She was like, Cinderella,
I'm just gonna take this.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a nice rambling rant there.
It made perfect sense. I agree. Yeah, I don't think that you can dispute.
I support this 100%. Thank you. Okay, Erin, why don't you tell me about Les Mis?
So there are some reasons why Cinderella story fits so well with musical theater specifically. So there are your kind of organizational aspects of it. Like there is the I Want song, which we've referenced before, which is the main character.
The wish your heart makes.
Exactly.
In my own little corner, in my own little chair.
Corner. So musicals are pretty well set up to address these deeper inner desires, and we also though have things like the dream ballet. So musical theater has always played around with dreams and kind of the washing away of the reality of the situation and allowing the characters to dream about how to solve their problems, which I think we see Cinderella do a lot. And this is because musical theater really began during the Great Depression, when America as a whole really needed something to escape into.
Right.
It's the reason that musical theater songs were the pop songs of that time, because society as a whole needed a way to get out of the Great Depression and think about the agency of having a dream, of the agency of being able to sit on your couch and dream about princes and princesses and these things, when in reality they're dying at job sites, they are dying from malnutrition, like all of these things. So they really needed something to escape into, and that's why the musical kind of came to be. So it's no wonder that we, on top of all of like Cinderella story is such a widely told tale, apart from all of that relevancy, we also get that added level that musical theater escapism is where it all began. So we talked quite a bit about Cinderella, Rodgers and Hammerstein, and Into the Woods, which are kind of the more direct adaptations, but I would also argue that Eponine from Les Mis and Jenna Hunterson from Waitress are both Cinderella if things had gone wrong.
They're persecuted heroines.
Exactly. So in the sense that we see Eponine in Les Mis, so she is Cinderella without the happy ending, right? Aww. So Eponine is removed from her mother, so her mother is unable to raise a child because she has no funds, she has no means, she has nothing. So she has to go and leave Eponine with this other family, and that's where we get her evil. It's not an evil stepmother, but it's an evil family that use this child to get money from her mother. And are supposed to use, like they say, your child needs food, your child needs clothing, your child needs XYZ materials, and then instead of buying them, they take the money.
Right.
So, and then eventually, Eponine's mother, Fantine, doesn't meet a good end either. So no one meets a good end. And we see this also with Eponine finding love through friendship. She finds a friendship with this male figure in her life, and winds up dying in his arms after sustaining a bullet wound as she's climbing over a barricade within this war. So you see, similar to In My Own Little Corner, she sings On My Own, which dreams of...
I might have sung that in my middle school choir.
I was singing Back to Ya in California, I believe. It's a great song, but it's also this I Want song. I would have challenged the writing of it to make it longing for something other than a romantic relationship, right? Because I think in the context of war and kind of famine, dreaming about a guy, like, would you really? Like, I feel like it's, I don't know, it's questionable for me.
Well, it was written in it was written in the 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I remember it was originally written in French.
It was originally like, it's a classic novel as well, so it's was then adapted, but it's from the 80s.
The songs were originally written in, like, it was written for the stage in France.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if the translation would be.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I don't. I think there's just so much more, like many more interesting themes within there of human resiliency that could have been told differently. Like Eponine could have had something else she was longing for.
Right.
But I think that you do see elements of Cinderella in her, certainly. And then my most favorite thing to talk about, Waitress.
I've seen so that the movie came first.
Yeah, the movie's so
and I've
great.
Seen that. I think I have it on DVD actually.
The movie's so good, and when they were writing the musical, they were working with the original story writer and stuff. But so Jenna Hunterson in Waitress is also a Cinderella. So she is she's a waitress in the South, and she's almost like if Cinderella continued and we knew for a fact that the prince was abusive, that the prince was a bad relationship. And so her Cinderella story is finding a way out of this relationship and into owning her own pie shop. So
I like pie.
I have one in my oven right now. So in this situation, the evil stepmother is her husband, and the fairy godmother is in the form of this kind of elderly patron who attends her diner where she works, who winds up, spoiler alert, but he winds up leaving her enough money to own her own pie shop. And you also see elements of you get all sorts of I want songs. It's pretty much all I want songs, which is kind of fun. But you also see really large reflections. So where we saw Cinderella in Into the Woods reflecting, I have to make a good choice here with my life. You see Jenna, who's a little bit older than Cinderella, sing this song called She Used to Be Mine, about wishing she could go back to a time where she could begin all of this over again. And she gets kind of an 11th hour I want song where she just says, I used to believe in all of these things. I used to love who I was. I used to be this strong person. And then life has kind of taken that dream away from me. And it's makes me sob every time I hear it. It's beautiful though. It's really, it's these repercussions of the what if that Cinderella of Sondheim's musical kind of poses. And I just thought it was really important to note that she also is provided with a second Prince Charming within this, but he's trying to have her on the side is kind of, so it's this discussion, and she doesn't really, obviously it doesn't work out, but she also gives birth to her daughter, and that's her new awakening. So without another man, without another romance, she is given her pie shop, so her agency, and then her daughter, who she removes from her abusive ex-husband.
Right.
So it's very much like a modern take on the way that Cinderella has her resiliency through humor. You see a lot of with she makes up pie names. She makes up really funny pie names for different things that she's going through, and she really does reflect on everything with humor, even though she is facing topics of abuse and topics that we see throughout the Cinderella stories.
Well, and I feel like it's also kind of a way to modernize the societal impact of Cinderella. Because like we see so many like modernizations that are just like that like take it at face value, that like, oh, it's like a girl who goes to a ball and she falls in love and he finds her shoe, and like, but like the real like the real bones of the Cinderella story is about, you know, that societal impact that it has, that this is like, you know, it's a heroine's journey. It's not just the external elements of the story. So I think that like what you're saying about Waitress is that like that's, you know, it's like translating the elements of Cinderella's circumstances in the original story into what those circumstances would be today.
Totally.
With like that same like social or like community circumstance. Totally. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
I just wanted to read, so Tina said, a broader theme that includes Cinderella stories is rags to riches. Many times the main character is an orphan. Annie comes to mind, the musical Annie. Which is a great I Want song.
Totally.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely, I think Annie is an interesting example, because it definitely is kind of a Cinderella, but because she's a child, it takes the romance element out of it. Right. Which is really nice, because you want to have a child in a romance. So but that's a really good that is a Cinderella story. I feel
like with Waitress too, it's kind of fun because they didn't just give her like, not to say just here, but they didn't give her a perfect man who she could run away with. Her solace is her daughter. Like, I just think that's so beautiful, you know? Her happy ending is forming a family of love, and raising a little girl, you know? I love it.
Yeah, it's good. Was that it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just scrolling back through to see if I missed anyone's comments. On my own.
Guest star.
Yeah, cool. Oh, look. Lucifer. Yeah, so if as we kind of wind down, if anybody in the chat has any other comments or any other questions, go ahead and type those in. So yeah, we are about to kind of wrap this up. So we can talk about season 3.
I'm so excited.
A little teaser. Yeah, so I think the kind of the big thing about season 3 is that we are going to be going to weekly episodes.
What?
Instead of monthly. So the way that's going to work, though, is that we'll still just have one work or one topic that we discuss every month, but rather than like one super long episode, it'll be broken up into 4 shorter episodes. So they'll be like maybe about 30 minutes each. So you'll get an episode every week that's shorter. Yeah, we just thought we'd try that and see how that format works out.
Yeah.
Oh, we got some comments here. You're both awesome and love you guys. Aw, we love you guys too. Thanks for joining us, guys. You guys are here. You stuck with us this whole time. And then There's a couple more. Should we tell them what September is going to be?
I don't know if I can contain it any longer.
What are we talking about for September, Erin?
It is my ironic and unironic favorite thing. We are journeying to Riverdale. It's so good and so bad and just like...
And yeah, I'm not so much into the show, but I was like kind of a casual fan of the comics as a kid.
I was too.
Yeah, so I'm into talking about that. I think that'll be a fun one for September. I think that kind of goes with the like, because like September is like kind of back to school time,
right?
So I think that works. Oh, Nicole's excited about Riverdale. Tina said the format sounds great. Yeah, I think that'll be really. I'm interested to see how that affects like how we discuss things, having it in 4 shorter episodes. Yeah, so Riverdale is for September.
Be ready for me to talk about psychology for days.
Yes, that's gonna be fun. And then we have one more thing that it's still like kind of a ways away, but we wanted listeners to kind of start thinking about this. So in January, we will be having our first annual Pop DNA Film Awards.
I'm excited.
If you're just listening to this and you're not watching the video, both of our faces are like really excited right now. So yeah, so be looking for more information about that on our social media. We're going to have listeners vote on awards. So there's going to be I have my survey monkey all set up, so that'll be how we'll do the ballots. So yeah, so be looking for information about that on our social media, and be thinking about the movies that you've watched in 2020, because we're gonna need your input.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's see. Is there anything else that we need to?
I don't think so. I feel like, we're just excited to be starting our 3rd year of all of this.
We're starting season 3, you guys. It's been, in October, it'll be 2 years since we started this podcast.
Our pod is almost going to attend preschool.
Yes. A toddler. Our podcast is a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
It's a podler.
Rhonda wins. You just win.
Alrighty. Yeah, so I guess that's about it, and we can wrap it up. Thanks to everybody. Yeah, thanks to everybody who tuned in. I hope this is fun for everybody. I know it was fun for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else we need to add?
I feel like this is in keeping with tradition that we never know how to end.
We don't know how to end.
No.
If we come up with something good in like the next 30 seconds, then I can just edit this part out and no one will ever know.
Except the people that are here right now.
That's true. They'll know. All right, guys. Well, just, be resilient.
Be resilient.
Have courage and be kind.
Courage and be kind. Eat
wash
pie.
Your wash your hands. Yeah.
Wash your hands.
Mm-hmm. Wear your mask in public.
Even if things are opening, like, be sparing with how much you go out.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, thanks for listening. Like SNL. Oh yeah, because on SNL they don't know how to end their sketches.
You get
Oh,
there.
Tina says you need a goodbye song. We do need a goodbye song.
We do.
Yeah, we'll work on that next
Yeah.
time. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks you guys so
Yeah.
much for joining us. We will see you next time.
Ah.
Bye.